dear Bagginses and Boffins.
So, should fans be worried? Some are really worried. So hopefully this can clear it up. This is where they play into this it's not a trope, but they play into this idea that Tolkien wanted other people to tell his story. And to some degree it is. I mean, he did sell the rights to the story when he was alive. And he does have these little tidbits where he says he wants to leave room for other minds to shape the world. But again, how much of that is adding small pieces versus creating an entire show with just the appendices of the book, right? Like, he's not saying he wants you to rewrite the whole thing. To me, it's not even that fine of a line. It's like you can add some things, like Peter Jackson added and subtracted some things and made it better, in my opinion. But he didn't completely change the overall dynamic of the work. But they go on to say that Peter Jackson took many liberties with Tolkien's text. The liberties that they're talking about, though, are very tiny changes, such as, well, I guess this is one big change. Aragorn being reluctant to be king. That's one that is a big change, and I think it is for the better. But then the tiny changes, like leaving out Tom Bombadil. I know some people are still really upset about that, but it's such a tiny part of the books, and it would have just dragged down the movie. Like it and then we add all of the feelings and emotions you get from that scene in the books. We add that in right back in with Treebeard. So to me, those are not taking liberties or changing Tolkien's text. Because what Peter Jackson's not doing, he's not taking the appendices and making a 5-season TV show out of it. So, like, I am trying to be optimistic with these guys, but this is such a mind-boggling. Like, how are you supposed to make a show?
To be fair, the appendices and a few poems that are inside.
That's true. They've got the poems, the songs, the stories, and the appendices. But it just so Peter Jackson, again, we're going to compare this, and it's not fair. Peter Jackson could literally lift dialogue from the books and then make subtle changes to it to make it flow more with how his characters spoke. Yeah. They cannot do that. They have the poems and the appendices, which have very few quotes, which means they can't use quotes. And then they can't even use certain key elements from other works. They can only use it if it's directly referenced in the appendices. But then they wouldn't be able to use stuff that's unique to the Silmarillion, for example, that is not talked about. And I don't know where that line is, right? So I don't know if there's a special dagger or something, for example, but it's not mentioned in the appendices. Could they include it? And if so, does it have to be completely changed to a different looking thing so that you don't recognize it? That's the other thing. The fact that we cannot have stuff that looks like things we already know means everything's unrecognizable, which means you have to over-explain everything. You have to be like, oh, this is, this is Mithril now or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, it won't look the same, so we won't know. So every little detail has to be re-explained again, which they probably would do anyway. It's a show for people who might not have seen Peter Jackson's movies, but still, for those of us who have, it'd be nice if we could recognize something before it's told to us. And so that's my worry, is that there's just going to be so many things that just feel not the same, that we're going to basically be wondering if we're actually in Middle Earth. I will say, I think there's a photo of it here. The elves, the little here it is. This little it's like a fall or autumn setting with elves. There's like a waterfall. That does look familiar. I actually like the look of this. I don't know what's happening, but it looks right. Like everything feels like this looks like I'm back in Rivendell or something.
Yep.
But this shipwreck scene, that doesn't look like
Well,
anything.
we don't really have anything like like we have some river canoeing scenes and we have some sailboats coming down the river,
Yeah.
but we don't have any like big nautical things going on.
No, exactly. So that's completely different.
But you know it's happening. I mean, it has to be, but we just don't see it. So I don't
Yeah,
mind
exactly.
it.
But like all I'm saying is like in terms of things that actually make us feel like we know like we can be like, "Oh, we want to be the meme where you got Leonardo DiCaprio pointing at the TV and being like, "Oh, I know that. I know where that is." We as fans, we want to do that. Like I want to sit down with my wife and do that and point out, look, that's this, and then she'll roll her eyes. That's what I want. All right, and it's not going to happen. It's going to happen very few times because they don't have the rights to anything. um, and then, yeah. So that's my worry. Um, but I do think they do seem to care. Now that is something that people are debating about right now, saying, "Oh, they kicked off these people, and they're forcing, changes to people's skin color and all this stuff." That aside, I do think these people actually enjoy Tolkien's work. I really do. You cannot read a Tolkien quote every day and not enjoy that. Like if you don't like that, you wouldn't work on this project. The question becomes though is how much, and this is something that I think we'll talk about in a different video, but how much of modern day influences and personal social issues do you bring in, and does that impact you when you go to write a story like this? Because Peter Jackson tried really hard not to add any of his own ideas, and this it seems like they might be adding their own ideas that are based on their real world lived experiences, which can really bring it some life, but also runs the risk of going against certain elements of Tolkien that will make us feel like we're back in Middle Earth. That about wraps it up. Anything you want to add to that at the very end? Are you worried about this?
I think we should all be worried. But maybe they're just trying to get our expectations so low that we'll be blown away.
I
So.
I really like that. I actually think that they thought that we would love that teaser.
Oh no.
I think so for the record, I will say we are not the target audience of the teaser. The target audience is people who have no idea that this show is even coming up. All of my friends know it's coming up because I keep telling them. And 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 anyone who's watching this knew it was coming up because they are looking this stuff up on YouTube. But the people that was targeted at were people watching the Super Bowl who had no idea that this was coming up. And so on one side, it's like we're not the target audience. I get that. But on the other side, I think that they showed us those moments to show us like how like they were clearly trying to show us some things. Like they showed us that random scene of elves in a weird grove. That doesn't nobody cares about that. That's just for the Tolkien fan. That's just for the fans of Middle Earth. And so there's elements of that where it's like, okay, that looks good. That looks right. But then there's those moments that make you question what the heck's going on. Why is Galadriel or ice climbing with a dagger?
That's a good point. So if you watch this trailer, say you don't even know what Lord of the Rings is, it might look pretty cool.
Right? Yeah. Now the problem is I don't believe they expected the backlash, because they thought that they actually did cover the basis in terms of including familiar characters and, having backstory to beloved characters like Elrond and Galadriel. I'm not saying that we didn't want it or wanted it either way. What I'm saying is I think they thought simply by showing us those people and telling us that that's Galadriel and that's Elrond, we would be like, oh, this is awesome. But what we're really doing is we're kind of looking at it and saying, this doesn't look like Elrond. This doesn't look like Galadriel. And yes, we have a bias because we've seen the versions of them that they become. But that's why you are creating this or this show franchise to begin with, because the movies were so successful because they were so good. Like, it's just I don't know how much we're supposed to critique them on it, but it's hard not to when that's ultimately why this is even anything to begin with. Peter Jackson did such a phenomenal job that it basically created the modern fantasy genre as we know it in cinema. And so obviously we're going to be looking at this as a precursor to that and say, what the heck's going on? This doesn't feel right. And I'm really hoping they can pull it together to make it feel like it is truly the start of Elrond's journey, of Galadriel's journey, and that it'll flow right in to those characters, and we'll just pick up where we leave off here. But yeah, I do not think they realized how much backlash was going to happen when they showed us some of those scenes. I'm not even talking about the people of color. I'm just talking about the Galadriel, warrior Galadriel, doing silly things like ice climbing with a knife and charging into battle. Well, yeah, we'll see. I think it can work. I think they can bring it together. These are younger versions of themselves. Perhaps maybe the characters look a bit too young, considering they are supposed to, they're elves, so they're not going to age as dramatically. But I think we can get around that the same way we got around Aragorn having a beard and that kind of stuff. It just, the characters have to actually remind us of themselves for us to feel that immediate attachment. Because I think for Tolkien fans, it's actually harder to gain those trusts back, because like a person watching that trailer and thinking, oh, this looks cool, check it out, they're immediately going to just care about characters that you tell them to care about. Like, oh, this is a warrior princess type person. She's a good guy. And here's her, going on an adventure. You're going to care about that. Similar to how we cared about the Hobbits. But what's not going to work is for the fans of us who know Galadriel and know Elrond, we're going to be saying, wait a minute, is there like a hidden clue that this is not really Galadriel? Because she's not acting right. Like, she's acting off. And so it's hard for us to get out of those previous characters. So they actually have to try much harder to win us over than random fans of the teaser that are just checking out the show. But yeah, I think we are worried. For those people saying that we're not worried, we are. We're choosing to be optimistic. I think there is a lot of things that they can use here, and it's about bringing it all together. I wish they had mentioned Howard Shore here. I thought we did a video a while back where it was rumored that he was coming on to help with the sound. That would go a long way to helping reestablish Middle Earth. If you turn on that show and the very first thing you hear is something different but familiar to the music.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping maybe that is true.
It can't be the same, right?
It cannot. They do not have access to Peter Jackson's films, so it cannot be the same. But I think, it's similar to a lot of composers. this is I'm a musician, so I can make this joke, but a lot of composers just keep writing the same song for every movie they do. Just I mean, look at John Williams.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
And look at who did the music for Inception. Forget his name.
Zimmer?
Yeah, look at all of his is the same big.
Well, no, I mean I remember. It's a really random movie I'm bringing up, but Maverick. It's a Mel Gibson movie.
Yeah.
And we were watching it together, and Randy Newman did it, and we were like, "This is pretty much the score to A Bug's Life." And we're watching this live action like movie of Western.
That's funny. But yeah, like it's hard for them to not recreate the magic that they have already made something great, and it's hard for them to get away from that. I think Howard Shore coming on, writing a new script, you're going to have that similarity, and you're immediately transported back there. And for those of us that are really mad about the character design, we can just close our eyes and and we'll just listen. But yeah, I think that about sums it up. Let us know in the comments down below, what do you think? Did the Vanity Fair article answer any of your questions? Maybe calm your worries down a little bit, or did it actually, in my case, make them more worried, because now I realize the limited scope of what they have access to. As much as I think these people do care about making a good Tolkien-esque Middle-earth story, the fact that they're going to be so limited on what they can actually use from Tolkien himself, I don't know how you pull together a 5-season epic without stumbling across that legal issue. But yeah, that's it for this one.
I regret to announce this is the end. I bid you all a very fond farewell.